Hello and welcome. Are you on a quest for success and happiness, searching far and wide for the key to unlock your potential? What if I told you that the key was right in front of you all along, hidden in plain sight? In the book Acres of Diamonds, I share a story that will change the way you think about success and the pursuit of wealth. I challenge you to look within yourself and your own community to find the opportunities that exist all around you. Join us as we journey together to discover the wealth that lies in our own backyards and learn how to transform our lives and achieve the success we seek. Let's embark on this transformative journey together. In the year 1843, the world was introduced to a man who would go on to drastically alter the lives of millions of people. Henry David Thoreau was the name of this man. At the time, he was known by the name Russell Herman Conwell. After working as a lawyer for a while, he moved on to become the editor of a newspaper, and after that, he joined the ministry. An occurrence that happened during the time that he was serving in the church would turn out to be the impetus for the significant changes that would follow, not just for him, but also for a great number of other people. One day, a group of young people went to Dr. Conwell's church and asked him if he would be willing to instruct them in subjects that were typically taught at the college level. He assured them that he would be more than delighted to comply with their request. They were all resolute in their pursuit of a college education, but they lacked the resources necessary to make it happen financially. He requested that they allow him some time to think about it, and he asked that they check in with him in a few days to see how things were going. After they had left, Dr. Conwell's mind began to wander, and he got an idea as a result. He puzzled about the following question: why is it that there can't be a decent school that takes kids from low-income households who are equally deserving? In a very short period of time, the idea completely consumed him. If you ask me, I don't see why not. It was a project that demanded an individual's whole attention as well as 100% of their efforts from that individual. Dr. Conwell raised many $million virtually single-handedly and utilized those monies to create Temple University, which is currently considered to be one of the most distinguished educational institutions in the United States. He accomplished this goal by giving over 6,000 lectures around the country, and in each and every one of those talks, he presented a tale that he called Acres of Diamonds. Because of this, he was able to collect the required sums. The audience members experienced the same thing that he did when they heard the story, since it was an authentic event that had a huge influence on him. Large sums of money, which he required for the construction of the establishment, started to come into his possession. The account of the event was given from the point of view of an African farmer who said that he had spoken to other African farmers who claimed to have earned millions of dollars by unearthing diamond mines. The farmer who provided the account was located in Africa. The farmer couldn't control his excitement after hearing these tales, and he couldn't wait to sell his property and begin looking for diamonds on his own. He was so enthusiastic that he couldn't even contain his enthusiasm. As a consequence of this, he made the decision to sell the farm and spend the remainder of his life adventuring throughout Africa in the pursuit of the dazzling diamonds that demanded such high prices on the markets of the world. But he was never able to do what he set out to do. According to the myth, he had reached the end of his rope and was experiencing feelings of sadness when he chose to end his life by taking his own life by leaping into a river and drowning himself. Back at the ranch or farm, depending on the circumstances, the individual who had acquired the land was in the midst of across the little creek that was situated on the property at this time. It seemed as if the source of the tremendous flash of light, which was colored blue and red, was the bottom of the stream. He got down on his knees, picked up the stone, and saw that it was rather a substantial rock. After giving it some thought for a bit, he decided to put the rock he was examining on the mantel of his fireplace, since it was such an interesting wonder. After a few weeks had passed, a visitor who was staying at his residence picked up the stone, carefully studied it, and weighed it in his hand. At that moment, he was on the edge of passing out. He explained to the farmer just what it was that he had found via their conversation. The visitor asked the farmer whether he thought it was a piece of crystal, and the farmer responded with a no, to the visitor's question. The farmer was then told by the visitor that he had discovered one of the largest diamonds that had ever been uncovered in his field. The farmer had a hard time believing that it was indeed the case. He told the other individual that his creek was loaded with stones much like that, but he anticipated that the stones in his creek would not be as large as the one that was displayed on the mantel. On the other hand, there were a great many of them strewn over the bottom of the stream. When the first farmer looked for a diamond mine, he sold his land to fund his search. When he located the mine, it turned out to be the most productive diamond mine on the whole African continent. It goes without saying that the land he sold was the property he had sold. The first farmer had unencumbered possession of acres worth of diamonds, but he made the decision to sell them for very little to nothing, so that he could look for diamonds in other places. The takeaway from this story is crystal clear. All of the first farmer's wildest dreams could have come true if only he had taken the time to study and prepare himself, to learn what diamonds looked like in their rough state. Additionally, given that he already owned a piece of property on the African continent, if he had thoroughly explored the property he owned before looking elsewhere, he would have had a much better chance of finding diamonds. This is the lesson that can be learned from this story. The idea that every one of us is, now at this very moment, standing in the middle of our very own acres of diamonds is the component of this story that had such a significant and profound effect not just on Dr. Conwell, but also on millions of other individuals all around the world. If only we had the vision and patience to evaluate the job in which we are now engaged, as well as ourselves, in a sensible and effective manner, we would generally find the riches that we are looking for, whether they are financial, intangible, or both. If only we had the insight and patience, if only we had the maturity and persistence to thoughtfully and thoroughly investigate the task in which we are now involved, as well as ourselves, we would be far more equipped to do so. Before we go looking for what we think are better pastures, let's make sure that the one we're already in isn't just as green, or maybe even greener than the one we're going after. Only then will we know whether or not it's worth leaving the one we're already in for the one we're pursuing after. It has been observed that if another person's pasture seems greener than ours does, it is highly possible that it is getting higher care than ours does. This is a very plausible explanation for the difference. This is an assumption that may be made with some justification. In addition to that, there are other persons inspecting our pastures at the same time that we are looking at the pastures of other people. There are very few things in the world that, in my view, are more depressing than the individual who spends his life hopping from one thing to another, constantly hunting for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but never sticking with one thing long enough to achieve it. No matter what it is that you have set out to do, there is a good chance that the means by which you might accomplish it reside inside the activity that you are now partaking in. It wasn't until a valiant farmer was completely paralyzed by polio and was compelled to dive deep into the vast resources of his mind that he got the idea to create really excellent beef products on his farm. Before this, the farmer had not the slightest idea that such a thing was even possible. Because of this motivation, one of the meatpacking enterprises that is now considered to be among the most successful in the country was founded. In addition to that, his land had acres upon acres of diamond mines. The reason for this is that he had never had to search for anything of that kind before. The most precious thing you own is undoubtedly your intelligence. You shouldn't go on to anything else until you've given this the appropriate amount of time to thoroughly study the prospects that are available in what it is that you're doing right now. When you were initially starting out, I think there were undoubtedly good reasons for you to pursue the field of work that you are now doing. And I am saying this because of that belief. If there weren't, and if you're not happy with the line of work that you're now in, then maybe it's time to conduct some serious investigation into alternative lines of employment. If there weren't, then there weren't any. After thoroughly exploring all of the opportunities available within one's own pasture, one need to be prepared to move on to other pastures, just like Dr. Russell Conwell did throughout the course of his life. As I was saying before, Dr. Conwell began his career as a lawyer, then went on to become a newspaper editor, and then found his true calling when he became a priest and the founder of a prominent institution. These are just a few of his many careers. The story of Stu Leonard, a laborer from Norwalk, Connecticut, who uncovered acres worth of diamonds hidden in his work, is widely regarded as one of the most dramatic examples of such a find. The beginning of Stu Leonard's professional life saw him working as a delivery man on a dairy route. As he went from place to place, he began to think about all of the dairy-related products that his customers really needed, and started to formulate strategies for how he might sell them to them. He bought an existing dairy with a very little down payment, and after putting in a lot of hard work, he began establishing a business around the dairy he had bought. Instead, did not destroy the operational dairy, which acted as the nerve hub of his firm, and instead ringed it with glass so that customers could view the manufacturing process. This allowed him to keep his business competitive, and he began adding more objects to his collection as he went along. Today, his dairy business is the largest in the world, and he trades in all manner of foods and items linked to the food industry. Customers travel from all over the surrounding area to conduct their shopping at Stu Leonard's world's largest dairy store. Stu Leonard's is known for having the largest selection of dairy products in the world. They have a positive opinion of it, and he has a good opinion of them. Customers who are too old or unwell to make the journey to Stu Leonard's business on their own are picked up by buses provided by Stu Leonard and brought there. These clients are either too elderly or too fragile to be served. What started off as a straightforward delivery route ultimately developed into a multi-million-dollar business for him. Despite the presence of the diamonds, Stu Leonard made the most out of the circumstances that he was in. Every single field of employment has at the very least one of these opportunities hidden away somewhere inside it. The opportunities are there at this very now, and they are pleading to be used in some manner. On the other hand, they are unable to communicate with us, and they cannot print any signs for us to read. The onus of accountability rests squarely on our shoulders, and it is incumbent upon us to examine the work that we have produced with the imaginative perspective of artists. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a French philosopher, once made the observation that it is our job as men and women to continue as if there are no bounds to our potential. We are equal participants in the creative process and co-creators of our work. One of the guys I know in Arizona got his start by operating a convenience store, which later evolved into a gas station. One day he was sitting at his desk and staring out the window as one of his more junior workers filled the gas tank of a client. From where he was sitting at his desk, he had a good view of what was going on. He was hanging about waiting for the job to be finished, and he kept a watchful eye on the customer the whole time. It dawned on him all of a sudden that the other person most likely had cash on him, and that there were undoubtedly things that he needed or wanted that he would be ready to pay for, given that those products were displayed in a way that made it simple for him to observe them. As a result, he began to offer supplementary items, such as fishing gear, followed by fishing permits, hunting equipment, camping gear, rifles, shotguns, ammunition, and hunting licenses. At some point in time, he decided to broaden the scope of his company to include the sale of weapons. He came into a terrific company that manufactured aluminum fishing boats and trailers. He began amassing ownership of the homes in the neighborhood that were immediately next to him. After that, he set up a department just for auto parts and accessories. He had always offered cool soft drinks and sweets, but now he also kept an amazing line of chocolates in a refrigerated case. Previously, he had only sold candy and beverages that were cold. In addition to the candies and drinks that were accessible at all times, this was also offered. Soon after that, he outsold every other person in the state combined in terms of the quantity of chocolates that he sold. His customers had access to hundreds of additional products that they could buy from him while they waited for their automobiles to be fixed. While they waited, their vehicles were being repaired. Because of all of these circumstances, it was certain that the overwhelming majority of individuals in the neighborhood who were in need of gasoline would go to his station, He was successful in selling more gasoline. Checks were deposited into customer accounts by him beginning on Fridays. The unexpected good fortune kept becoming larger and larger. The first step in the process was taken when a person with a human brain saw a customer who was standing about with money in his pockets but had nothing to spend it on. This sparked the idea that all of this might be done better. This consumer was completely clueless about what to do with his cash. Others would have lived and died with the small petrol station, and in fact they do. Others would have lived and died with the little gas station. My friend saw several diamonds in the rough. Both Stu Leonard in Connecticut and my friend in Arizona place a strong emphasis on delivering first-rate service to their respective clientele. Serve the customer, and more precisely, serve the customer in a way that is superior to how anybody else is presently serving the customer. The passage that is presented here is taken from the official company policy, which can be seen clearly displayed at Stu Leonard's store for the benefit of all customers. This is how it should read. Rule number 1, the client is almost always correct. Rule 2 states that you should review Rule 1 in the event that the customer is ever in the right. When they see a wealthy customer drive up to the station, many individuals who work at service stations have the thought cross their minds, I ought to be in his business. Not so. If only we would stop playing copycat with one another and start thinking creatively. Start thinking in new areas. There is just as much opportunity in one firm as there is in another one. I can tell you that it is attainable. We are the ones that are responsible for tracking it down. Taking a step back sometimes and analyzing your work from the vantage point of someone who is not directly involved may be quite beneficial. Someone who isn't familiar with him very well would question, why does he act in that manner? Has he given any thought to the fact that what he is producing may perhaps be built upon or developed upon itself in the future? If you are happy with the way things are now going, then you should by all means refrain from making any changes to the situation. Nevertheless, it could be a lot of fun to look for treasures that are hidden both inside ourselves and within our job. We never give ourselves the chance to get jaded or complacent, and we never allow ourselves to settle into a pattern. It is brought to our attention that a rut is, in essence, nothing more than a tomb that has had its ends kicked out of it. The germ that would ultimately become some of the world's most intriguing businesses was planted in a very restricted place, and it started off as a pretty simple idea. If something has to be done in one town, then there is a strong chance that it also needs to be done in all of the other towns and cities spread out throughout the country. Another question that you need to ask yourself is, at what it is that I am doing right now, how competent am I? Do you have a comprehensive grasp of all there is to know about the task that you do? Would you say that you are a professional of the highest caliber when it comes to the work that you do? How would you evaluate the quality of your work in comparison to that of others who work in the same profession as you do? In addition to being a writer, J.B. Matthews worked as an educator. In the past, he has been quoted as saying, "Unless a person has trained himself for this opportunity, the opportunity will merely make him silly." It is directly related to the amount of preparation that a guy puts into a significant event in terms of his capacity to maximize his enjoyment of it. When Dr. Matthews made that remark, I'm certain he intended to include the half of the world that is composed of women. It never fails to amaze me how little knowledge the vast majority of people have on the field in which they are employed. They will reply by saying something along the lines of, "That is not my department." It seems to reason that even if they saw the start of a fire in another department, they wouldn't alert anybody to the fact that it was happening. The vast majority of people who work in real estate are not directly engaged in the process of buying and selling homes and other types of property. They take guests on tours of various residences and properties, which is something that even a child as young as 6 years old is capable of doing. They refer to themselves as real estate experts, despite the fact that the majority of the time they have no understanding whatsoever about the processes of selling or marketing real estate. They really serve in the capacity of tour guides. they make the statement, "This is the living room," when they are speaking to intelligent men and women who are already acquainted with the look of a living room. Someone once said, and now that I think about it, I believe that it was that the human race is pretty similar to a convoy of ships during times of war. The whole fleet is slowed down to protect the ships that are traveling the slowest. Someone once said, and now that I think about it, I believe that it was that the human race is quite similar to a convoy of ships during times of war. And yet, humankind continues on in its plodding collective march, completely ignorant to the priceless treasures that are there under their feet. To begin, we need to differentiate ourselves from the crowd and refrain from automatically assuming that a certain way of life is preferable just because millions of other people choose to adhere to it as their major method of obtaining a living. After that, we will finally be able to start the steps necessary to become diamond miners. It's not the best way to accomplish things. This is merely a standard approach to getting things done. Those who are following the route that has the fewest challenges will have a big advantage. They are so far ahead of the competition that you can no longer distinguish the trail of dust that they leave behind them. Cutters are those who live and work on the leading edge, also known as the cutting edge. This edge is also known as the bleeding edge. They are the ones who clear the way for everyone else to follow in their footsteps. In all honesty, you and I both have a choice to make in this situation. To view diamonds in their original form as gems that have been cut and polished needs imagination, especially an inquiring mind. Similarly, it requires imagination to recognize a pile of iron ore as stainless steel. Develop a talent that you may call intelligent objectivity, which is the capacity to take a step back and look at your work as someone from Mars could look at it, in order to boost your chances of discovering your own acre's worth of diamonds. This is the ability to take a step back and look at your work as if someone from Mars could look at it. Whatever area of the economy or whatever profession does the kind of job you perform fall under. And how did you get started in it? Have you learned all there is to learn about the industry or profession in which you work? Isn't it about time that there was a change in the circumstance that might invigorate things? Which prospects are there for boosting the quality of the service provided to the customer? When you get up in the morning, it might be helpful to put some thought into what you want to do for the day by asking yourself this question: have I been diligently searching for these one-of-a-kind and highly marketable treasures, dissecting each and every facet of my work and the industry or profession in which it finds its existence? There has had to be a more effective way to carry out the responsibilities that I'm now working on. Could you help clarify what those ways are? When I think forward 20 years, what will my work be like, and how will it be done? Given that everything in the cosmos is in a condition of perpetual change, the question that naturally arises for me is how I may accomplish in the here and now what will invariably be finished. Consider what famous Amos accomplished with his chocolate chip cookies, and what Procter & Gamble did with soap. Both of these companies revolutionized their respective industries. These are just a few instances of what my friend in Arizona was able to do with his very small service station and what Stu Leonard was able to accomplish with his dairy route. There is no question that there is some element of risk involved. There is no kind of growth that does not come with some degree of risk associated with it. When we get out of bed for the first time in the morning, we immediately put ourselves in a potentially dangerous situation. We benefit from taking certain risks in our lives. They assist each of us in reaching the pinnacle of our particular potential. They improve one's eyesight and invigorate one's mental processes, making one's vision sharper. They allow us to move more swiftly and give each day a look that is clean and bright. People should never be allowed to establish any form of colony that is intended to be permanent. It is okay to do so with animals such as chickens, cows, and cats, but it must under no circumstances be carried out on human beings. People start passing away as soon as they establish permanent settlements in these areas. It is essential that we keep things moving in the right direction. A well-known novelist named Lloyd C. Douglas, whose works include The Robe, Magnificent Obsession, and a number of other books that have been highly popular, penned an article for a magazine in 1931 that was titled Escape. The article was about the author's desire to escape from his life. Within the context of that article, Douglas raised the following question: who among us has not, at some time in our lives, temporarily flirted with the concept of escaping? If all of those people who have given that idea the transient hospitality of their imagination had genuinely acted upon it when it first entered their brains, then a far smaller number of people would be living at their present location. And of the very small number of people who were able to successfully put the impulse into action, it is quite unlikely that many of them were ever able to detach themselves from the challenges that drove them to go out into the world to the degree that they had hoped. It is not unreasonable to hypothesize that the bulk of the time they crammed their issues into their old duffel bags and took them along with them wherever they went. The underlying lesson that the essay was seeking to convey was to not succumb to the temptation of running away from the issues that you are dealing with. You are able to prevail against them and come out on top while remaining in the same location. We are not looking for a way out of our uncertainty and frustrations. Rather, we are looking for a method to triumph over them. Our ultimate objective is to discover a way to overcome. In addition, one of the most efficient methods to accomplish that objective is to begin on the appropriate course of action and continue along it. You need to restate and reiterate your aim, which should be the thing that you want to accomplish the most, or the place in life that you want to get to the most. Imagine it very clearly in your mind, just as you can see the airport in Los Angeles while you're checking in at the airport in New York for your journey there. This will help you prepare for your trip. You could also keep your course constant and your engines running, much as a huge ship would do in a storm. This would be analogous to the situation. Even though it may seem as if the storm will never pass, it will finally blow over, and one morning when the sky is clear, you will find yourself sailing by the harbor light. Even though it may seem as though the storm will never finish, it will ultimately blow over. After then, you will be able to breathe out a tremendous sigh of relief, rest for a short while, and almost before you know it, you will find yourself diverting your attention back to the water once again. You will think of a new destination that you would want to travel to, a new adventure in which to take part, and then you will set sail once again. This strange-looking, bipedal, curious, innovative, tinkering, fiddling dreamer that we call a human being behaves precisely in this way. He does not get around problems by dodging them or running away from them. Rather, he overcomes them by succeeding in spite of them. And the moment he discovers a solution to one set of obstacles, he instantly starts hunting for further challenges that are far more difficult for him to overcome and then flee from. If you find yourself looking through travel guides and daydreaming about getting away from what you're going through right now, there's nothing wrong with giving in to those desires. It will divert your attention away from the issues at hand for a short period of time. After that, zero in on your goal and get to work. We'll cover your target in more depth at a later stage of this training program. Just pay attention to one thing at a time, and before you know it, you'll start to see those diamonds scattered all over your environment. And you'll realize that you're back where you started. It is normal to feel the want to uproot your life, abandon all you know, and start over in a new location from time to time. It is okay to act on this impulse. A citizen who makes the decision to stay in their home country and makes effective use of the resources that are offered to them in order to overcome the obstacles that they encounter and continue living their life is considered successful. Put aside 1 hour of your time every day with a notebook and a pen to reflect on the job you've done, beginning right away. Take it apart and investigate the myriad of parts that comprise its overall structure. You are sitting on an acre of diamonds right now. There are chances to be had in that location.